Genesis 24. We're going to start in 15, but as you're going there, we'll recap a little bit. You'll remember that Abraham is getting old. He's getting ready to depart this earth, and he feels it's time for his son to get a wife. So he sends his servant, makes his servant swear that he will go and find a wife for his son Isaac from among his own relatives back in Haran. And the servant swears. Abraham doesn't want his son to get a wife from Canaan. We've talked about that, from the people there. He doesn't want his son to go back where Abraham has come from, back to the relatives. We talked about that as well. So the servant he packs up and he heads off. He goes to the land and he goes outside. He makes the camels kneel down before a well of water. And he goes out at the period of time when women are going to come out to get water. And the reason he goes to the well and the reason he goes at this period of time is why?
Find a woman.
Find a woman. That's when the women are coming out. So that's when you're going to do it. He prays to God in verses starting in 10 through 14. Talks about the servant, the camels. He takes all choice gifts. He travels. And then when he gets there, he prays to the Lord, right? He gets out to the well and he prays to the Lord. He says, give me some specific things. When I see the woman coming out and I ask her for a drink of water, let her give me a drink of water, who's the one who is going to be the suitable wife for Isaac. And let her also say, I'll water your camels. Now, one of two of those things would have been typical, normal, everyday kind of request that a woman would probably do back then. Well, which one of those was it?
Give the man the water.
Yeah, give the man the water, right? Guy comes up, hey, can I get a drink of water? Absolutely. The thing that would have been unusual would be for the woman to say, oh, and by the way, let me water your camels. So, with this prayer, what is the servant seeking God to do for him?
Give him a specific sign.
Give him a sign. Specifics, right? This is so that I'll know that this is the right woman to kind of pursue. We talked about this last time, and we said that this kind of reminds us of a prayer of someone else in the Bible. Who was the other person? Gideon. And Gideon had asked for what?
Dew on the fleece, and not dew on the fleece.
Right, yeah.
But all around.
All around, let it be wet.
Not all around.
But you're right. So he requests something very specific. And so here we have the same thing. And he's really just seeking the Lord. He wants to make sure that this is the right woman, this is the right thing. Gideon wants to make sure this is God's will, that he's not just, kind of making things up in his mind or whatever. So that's kind of the little bit of the background from where we were. Let's read verses 15 through 21. Who would like to read 15 to 21? All right, go ahead, John.
And it came to pass, before he had done speaking, that behold, Rebekah came out, who was born to Bethuel,
Yep.
son of
Milcah,
Milcah, and wife of
Nahor, sure.
Abraham's brother, with her pitcher upon her shoulder. And the damsel was very fair to look upon, a virgin, neither had any man known her. And she went down to the well and filled her pitcher and came up. And the servant ran to meet her and said, let me, I pray thee, drink a little water of the pitcher. And she said, drink, my lord. And she hasted and let down her pitcher upon her hand and gave him drink. And when she had done giving him drink, she said, I will draw water for thy camels also until they have done drinking. And she hasted and emptied her pitcher into the trough and ran again unto the well to draw water and drew it for all his camels. Did you say 20 or 21?
21.
And the man wondering at her held his peace. whether the Lord had made his journey prosperous or not.
All right, thank you. All right, so what happens in verse 15? What's going on in 15?
The women come in.
Okay, the women come out, absolutely. And specifically, one woman comes out, right? Specifically, Rebecca. And what else is going on in verse 15? What do we notice? What?
She's
Verify the
Abraham's
lineage.
niece.
The lineage, Abraham's niece. We've met her before. We got news. Abraham got news that this girl was born a while back, a couple chapters back there. Do you notice about his prayer? What does it say about his prayer?
Before he had finished praying.
Before he had finished praying. His prayer is being answered a long time after he prays.
No, right now.
Right? It's in the midst of his prayer. He hadn't even finished his prayer. Right? He hasn't even finished his prayer, and God is answering that prayer right then and there, right? Quickly. Now, does God sometimes answer prayer right away?
No.
Of course he does, because it says it right here. Right? Sometimes he does.
Sometimes. Not all the time.
No, I didn't say all the time. You're right. That would be the next question, right? Does he answer prayer this fast all the time? The answer is no. But he does answer it quickly sometimes. Right here, it's answered before the guy's even finished praying.
Well, maybe you want something you don't need, and he's not going to give it to you.
Then it don't get answered.
Can't imagine that.
Well,
Gonna get answered? No.
yeah, it all depends on what you mean by getting answered. Yeah, he's going to answer. The answer just may be, as Luther said, no. No, you're not going to get it. Listen, our children ask us, our grandchildren ask us for things sometimes, and sometimes it's not good for them. It's not healthy. Can I have, cake right before I go to bed? Probably not. You're not going to have that and, Coca-Cola and, go to bed because you're not going to bed. So sometimes things are no. But here, it's answered before the guy's finished praying. It's instant, it's kind of this instantaneous thing. And for us today, don't we like that kind of answered prayer?
Amen.
Yeah, we want it. But before we finish the words coming out of my mouth, I want it to be answered. We're that minute rice, that 30-second microwave kind of people. At least I am. Wondering why the rice is taking so long in the microwave. Sometimes we want to be that way, but God doesn't always answer prayer that quickly. God sometimes takes his time. How do we know?
Because look how long Sarah waited for Isaac.
That's right. Look at the difference, and you, even though God had promised that Abraham and Sarah would have a son, you know that they were praying about it. Abraham really wanted a child, right? Sarah really wanted a child. Sure, but this is years, right? This is years that go by, and so they're praying. They're praying. This year, this time, let this be it. And God takes his time. He takes his time. So he doesn't always answer prayer quickly. He does sometimes. Sometimes he doesn't. I'm thinking about another time when in the New Testament you've got Jesus, and he comes across a woman. And the woman has been sick. And she's been sick with an issue of blood. Anybody remember how long?
12 years.
Not 12 days.
12 years.
Not 12 weeks.
12 years.
12 years.
Not 12 months. No, right? Like 12. Like wrap your hands around that. She was sick for 12.
She wasn't allowed to come out of this place in public with that disease either.
No, there's a lot going on there socially. According to the law, God's law, she was actually unclean, meant to be outside of community, outside of fellowship. She was not in fellowship with, she was not meant to be around her family, her friends, and she was not allowed to go to the temple and worship God. She was at a very bad place.
That was God's law?
Yeah.
Well, as a nurse, I'm surprised she was still living.
Yeah, it's a tough, we don't know what was going on, but she was living for 12 years. So anyways, the point is, here we've got the servant, and the servant is praying to God, and God answers before the last, amen comes off the guy's lips. here comes the woman, Rebecca. Sometimes God answers prayer quickly. Sometimes he takes his time. At the end of the day, we know intellectually, though we don't always like it. We don't always act this way. Is God's time better than our time?
Yes. His plan is perfect.
Depends.
It depends. God's time, is it always better than our timing?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Oh, it's always better than our time.
It's always better than our timing. Sometimes they coincide. But God's timing is always better. What kind of woman is Rebecca according to the verses that we read here? Take a kind of skim back through. Think about it. What kind of woman is Rebecca? We get a little bit of a description of her here.
I think she was kind and considerate.
She's very beautiful,
And beautiful.
kind and considerate,
Virgin.
a virgin, so she's pure. She's a virgin. She hasn't been with a man.
She's strong.
She's strong. She's a hard worker. She'd be the Proverbs woman, right? Proverbs 31 kind of woman. Proverbs 31 hasn't been written yet, but she's that kind of woman. So she's attractive. She's a virgin. She's hospitable. She's kind. And she's hard working. What does Rebecca do when the servant asks her for a drink of water?
Yes, it did.
She gives it to him. And then she
Volunteers.
volunteers, right? This was all part of the prayer, right? The specific part of the prayer. Then she goes and she waters the camels. How many camels does this guy have?
I don't know, but they drink a lot of water.
They do. Verse 10 tells us. 10! Interesting. Verse 10 says there's 10 camels that go with them. I looked it up. I didn't know. But the average camel drinks, or can drink, 53 gallons of water in 3 minutes.
Oh, my goodness.
World record.
Now, we don't know. We don't know if these camels had been watered at any point, in recent time. But regardless, Rebecca doesn't know. She doesn't know when the last time these camels were watered, right? So what is she in for, potentially?
One of
500 gallons of
Plus
water.
gallons of water.
She's in for a long day, right? This is hard work. She's got to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So we know she's a hard worker, hospitable and all that. But she sets herself up for extra work.
And the thing of it is, none of the other sisters volunteered to help her.
Well, we don't know how many other women were out there, if there were any at this point or not. We just focused in on Rebecca. But she's a hard worker. And she's
Selfless too.
selfless? Yeah. I mean, she's not getting anything out of this at this point, right? She's not doing it for the money or anything like that. In a day and age when a lot of people are trying to get out of work, do as little work as possible. You ever met somebody try to do as little as possible? I've worked with people like that. Early on, it was me. I was the guy trying to look busy. What are you doing? Oh, sweeping the floor or whatever. Rebecca is just not that kind of woman. She's out there, she's hardworking, and she doesn't seem to be doing it for any other reason than she's going to show hospitality and kindness. Is there anything we can learn from Rebecca?
Be the same if possible.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good qualities here. Just the kindness, the hospitality, the willing to go. Here we could connect this with what Jesus says, where he says, if somebody wants you to walk a mile,
Walk 20.
yeah, you're going to go the extra, kind of do the extra. She's going extra above and beyond. We could learn that. We could learn something from that, to be kind, to be hospitable, and to walk the extra mile with people. Go that little extra step. Not for any reward. Because again, she doesn't know, it's not like she's doing this because the guy said, I'll give you, $50 if you do this or something like that. She doesn't know. She's just being kind and hospitable. All right, let's look at 22 through 28. Let's read those sections there. Somebody else who wants to read those? 22, unless, I don't want to jump, but unless somebody's got a question about what's here. I think it's fairly kind of straightforward, the stuff we're looking at here.
Well, could I jump ahead with a thought?
Ahead? No.
Ahead?
No, not jumping ahead. Hold the thought, write it down, make a note. We don't want to jump ahead.
Well, I've been thinking about this this all day.
Well, you can say it before we end. Definitely.
I'll be patient.
Okay.
Wait.
There, good job. All right.
I do have one little thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's not much. It just when it says "behold a virgin," and then in parentheses I have "no man had known her." Does that just mean she doesn't have another person?
Nobody's been.
It's kind of reiterating the same
It's
thing.
just the same thing, right?
Nobody's touched. She is a pure virgin. She's not been married, and she has not had sexual relations with anybody. Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
All right, let's look at 22 to 28. Who wants to read that? You'll read it? All right, go ahead.
And it came to pass as the camels had been drinking, that the man took a golden earring of half a shekel weight, and 2 bracelets for her hands of 10 shekels weight of gold, and said, Whose daughter art thou? Tell me, I pray thee, is there room in thy father's house for us to lodge in? And she said unto him, I am the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, which she bare unto Nahor. She said furthermore unto him, I have both straw and fodder enough and room to lodge in. And the man bowed down his head and worshiped the Lord. And he said, Blessed be the Lord God of my master Abraham, who hath not left destitute my master of his mercy and his truth. I being in the way, the Lord led me to the house of my master's brother. And the damsel ran and told them of her mother's house these things.
Okay. All right. So what is the servant doing? The servant doing in verses 22 and 23.
Well, my version said a golden nose ring.
Mine did too.
Yeah.
There's different, they say one says a ring and breast is gold.
Yeah. Well, he's going to give her some gifts. It is a nose ring. I think it might be some of the older translations just say a ring or something. It's not a ring for your finger. It's literally a nose ring.
Well, I had a nose ring once.
Well, see, you're like Rebecca having a nose ring. So yeah, it's a nose ring. So the servant, he recognizes, right, his prayer is being answered exactly the way he asked God to fulfill it, which again doesn't always happen, but sometimes it happens that way. And so here he's going to give her some gifts. He gives her a couple gifts here, and then he wants to know what? Who are you? Yeah, again, he's kind of investigating a little further, wants to make sure that this is the right woman, she comes from the right family, and of course, she does. And he wants to know, what about the family?
Well, can you feed me and house me?
Yeah. Are you and your family members, you seem very kind, you seem very hospitable, so the question is
Is your family?
Is your family? Is your family? Now, would this be an odd thing for a stranger to be welcomed into other strangers' homes if they come to a city or something? Would that be strange?
Yes.
No.
Well, I don't know about that thing, but now it would be.
Oh, it's a big debate. Let's get this side again.
Now,
Back then, it was probably acceptable.
Yeah, today, that would be odd, right? You just don't go pick strangers up on the side of the road. Hey, buddy, you need a place to stay, right? We don't do that today. But back then, it was very common. And you remember Lot. Lot is at the gate of the city, of a wicked city, right? Wicked, sinful city. You've got the men who come in, they're angels, but Lot doesn't know that. But they come in, they're strangers, and what does Lot offer?
Offer them his home.
That's right. This is what the ancient world was all about. Very important to have hospitality, because they did have like little inns and such, but the inns were not a place that anybody who was of any kind of noble character would want to be seen in. There's a lot of bad things going on at the inn. Okay, so, and there wasn't a lot of inns anyways, but if they had those kind of things, it was typically like a house of prostitution. You know, Rahab the prostitute, Her house is kind of in the city wall. People would have visited her. Those are kind of the inns that you get. So hospitality among strangers was just an ancient cultural practice. It was very, 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 very important. Not just for people who believed in the one true God, but just people in that culture. You can read ancient Greek and Roman and different historians and histories and things, and they'll talk about this concept of hospitality. You were meant to give hospitality to strangers.
Isn't there a place where it talks about somebody that they went somewhere and a place and they were at the gates of the city, and I guess hoping that someone would give them a place for the night.
Now, that's in Judges, I believe.
Elijah.
Isn't that the guy that with his concubine?
Yeah, I can't be 100% sure, but I'm kind of going with Mike on this. I think it's in Judges. Yeah.
But that was the way that you did it.
It was the way that you did it. It was
You don't do that in
cultural practice.
I did it once.
Did you?
We lived kind of out in the country, and there was a guy knocked on our door in the middle of the night, and he wanted to know if he could sleep in the car. And I said, no, just lay down there on the couch. My wife would not go to sleep,
Yeah.
and he figured out after a while that nobody was resting. And he said, said, I think I better move on down the road.
Nobody was getting
But
rest.
he had,
I've kind of done that too when I was growing up.
She said, "Don't
Somebody
you
came
do
through
that."
town and they were from a Church of Christ anywhere in the country and they needed help or a place to stay. You just said, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, not a very common practice today. Probably not a very wise practice today. Especially, probably for most of us. It's just, we know that there's a lot of bad things that go on. People take advantage.
Younger though, we used to sleep with the doors and windows wide open and,
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
you
Sure. Yeah, and then of
we didn't have
course,
air conditioning, so we slept with
Yeah.
a sheet
and of course, the reason we are less and less likely to do that is because people took advantage
yes.
of the, and they did in the ancient world too, but again, this was kind of the cultural norm, the cultural practice. Can you show someone hospitality without inviting them to sleep in your home?
Sure.
Sure. You can be kind to them. You can show them hospitality. You can take them out for a meal or, right, buy them coffee, whatever. There's ways that we can show hospitality today, and we should. But it's probably not the wise thing to do to be letting strangers just come and live in your house for the night or the week or who knows how long. Interesting though, think about this for later study. One of the things that shepherds, elders in the New Covenant, New Testament church are meant to be starts with an H. Hospitable. And again, that had to do with this concept of the ancient world. You didn't have a place to stay, so if you went to the church where the church met, the shepherds, the elders were meant to be those who would do that kind of thing, let you come in and stay and show you hospitality. Again, not that we're asking Richard to take in people off the street, but hospitality. So anyways, hopefully that'll help you make connections in the New Testament as well when you see this issue of hospitality. It had a bigger meaning of letting people into your home than it does today because, again, it wouldn't be wise to do that with strangers today. All right, so what does Rebecca say about her family and about this stranger staying with her and her family?
We have food and room.
We have food, we have room. You are welcome. We are a family that is open to strangers. We're a family that's hospitable.
You've got food for your animals.
We've got food for your animals. We've got place for you to stay. Not a big deal. And of course, what's the servant's reaction as he finds out all of this? He finally finds out everything. What's he do?
Thanks God.
He praises God. He worships. Mine says he worships. Does yours say worship? Worship. So according to this verse, what is one thing that worship includes?
Praise.
Giving thanks.
Prayer and praise, giving thanks, absolutely. And where does he do this? Does he do it in a religious building or something along those lines?
They're on the spot.
It's right there on the spot. Right there on the spot. So what does it tell us about worship? Just in general.
Anywhere and everywhere.
Anywhere and everywhere, right? We can worship anywhere and everywhere. And worship is not just...
Building that you gather in.
Sure. And it's not a Bible study necessarily, although all those things would be aspects of worship. But worship can take place just with a prayer, a praise, glorifying God. That is worship. So we can do it anywhere. That, of course, does not mean that when God calls and tells his people to worship him in certain ways that we can just ignore that. Right? And just kind of say, maybe you've heard this before. Somebody says, well, I can worship God anywhere. And we would say, sure you can. Absolutely. We got an example here. But are you also worshiping God in the way that he has called his people to worship him? Under the old covenant, temple worship was a certain specific way. Under the new covenant system, there's a specific way that we gather together at certain times, and that would be a corporate gathering, a corporate worship, something along those lines. But important to recognize that worship can happen anywhere, and that worship is just even the simple offering up of a prayer, praising God, praising him for who he is. That's worship.
Who was Abraham's brother? Was it Nahor?
Laban.
Nahor. Rebekah's brother is Laban.
Right, but Nahor was
Nahor, yeah.
Abraham's brother.
Yes. What does Rebekah do after she tells the guy what's going on? He tells the servant. What's that?
You go tell Daddy.
Yeah, I'm going to go home, right? She runs home. And why is she running home?
She wants to talk to her mother about what she's doing.
Yeah, I got to let him know. Does she take the servant with her? No, she doesn't. No, she doesn't. She is going to go run and let her family know, and they are going to do what? They're going to prepare. They're going to get ready.
And the men came out.
Yeah, that's going to come. They're going to come out and take care of some things. But she runs home. She's going to get the family ready. She's going to let them know everything that's going on. And the servant is just going to stay out there. Now, let me ask you this. Is the servant alone with these camels?
It doesn't say.
He does have servants with him. It said earlier.
It does. Later on, it says there's other people. Doesn't tell us how many. It is unlikely, even if we didn't have the rest of the story that we'll look at in a few moments, it is extremely unlikely that one servant guy at this period of time in history is going to take 10 camels by himself and go on this very long, dangerous trip by himself, where there are people who would rob and steal and kill and plunder and all that kind of stuff. He's going with a group of people. We don't know exactly how many necessarily, but there's a group of people. So when Rebekah says, you can come, we have enough room, it's not just for one guy and his camels. It's a group. It could be a small group, but it's still a group of people. So it's not just one guy. This is a group of people that this family's got to get ready for.
Very trusting.
Right, very trusting. Yeah, again, this is their culture. There was an unwritten kind of concept out there that the host took care of the guest, and if they did that well, they were honoring the gods. If you believed in the one true God, you were honoring Yahweh, but you could be a pagan and you'd just be honoring the deities or whatever. And the same thing with the guests. If the guests took advantage of the host, they were in trouble with the gods, right? That was their cultural concept. So there was always going to be some kind of checks and balances with this. But the point is, Rebekah is recognizing not only she, hospitable to this one guy. There's a group of them. There's some people going back to the house. So they have to prepare.
Friends one day, they could come and spend the night at my house, but don't expect me to fix you breakfast the next morning.
Well, that's not a very hospitable thing to do.
If I came to your house, I'd want breakfast.
That's right. I want breakfast. I want bacon and eggs and sausage and some pancakes and
Well, that's what one of them said. She said, well, I will cook. And I said, well, what are you going to cook? And she said, bacon and eggs. And I said, are you bringing the bacon and eggs?
Because there ain't anything here. You got a roof, that's it. There's a warm place to stay. That's it. Warm place to stay and hot chocolate. All right. Anything else in this text that jumps out at you that you want to talk about before we move on? And we're moving through this passage kind of quickly because there's really just a lot of repetition of this prayer. We've seen the fulfillment of the prayer. We see what kind of woman this is, but we're going to get on with the story here. Anything else in this text before we move on?
Can I tell you my story that you told me?
If it's relevant, you can. Is it?
Say it again.
Go ahead.
Well, a few weeks ago, he explained why Abraham was sending this servant to his homeland for a woman. Okay, right now in our TV news, there's a prince and an American woman, and I think she's already persuaded him to leave what he's been brought up to be, a prince.
Okay.
And that's exactly what you said, Abraham explained. I don't want somebody from this country. I want somebody from my country.
Right. Yes.
So when Prince Harry married, he married somebody from this country.
They're kicked out.
Okay, so relevant in the sense that here is a modern example of what Abraham did not want.
Exactly.
That's right. That's a good example. Yeah, good example. Very good. Very relevant. Thank you. Go ahead.
They left on their own accord, though. They chose to leave.
Yeah. And now they're wondering who's gonna pay.
I believe they want to make their own money. They want to cut tires.
Well, yeah. So that would be that kind of example of what Abraham didn't want to happen. He doesn't want his son to cut off, this promised land, this promise that God has given him, be persuaded to do anything else. So he's not going to do that, right? He's not going to send his boy there or take women from that area. Absolutely. All right. Anything else?
Where's the well at?
Outside the city, which is right in Haran area. I don't have a PowerPoint or something I'd show you, but it's outside the city. And a city back then is not, it's not not what we think of as a city. It would have been like a little town, little town kind of thing. So that's where it is, right outside the city. So she's not running probably very far. It's not like she's, going 20 miles up the road. The water had to be somewhat close. So she might be running a couple miles here, could be 5 miles away or 3 miles away or who knows, something like that, but probably not. She's not running too far away. So she's going to go home. She's going to set everything up. Let's look at the text. We're starting to run a little out of time. We're going to look at verses 29 through 33. 29 to 33. Anybody else want to read?
Rebecca had a brother whose name was Laban, and Laban ran out to the man by the well. So it came to pass when he saw the nose ring and the bracelets on his sister's wrist, and when he heard the words of his sister Rebecca saying, "Thus the man spoke to me," then he went to the man. And there he stood by the camels at the well. And he said, "O come in, O blessed of the Lord. Why do you stand outside? For I have prepared the house and a place for the camels." Then the man came to the house, and he unloaded the camels and provided straw and feed for the camels, and water to wash his feet and the feet of the men who were with him.
Stop for a moment. The feet of the men who were with him. We don't know how many, but this just confirms our suspicion. Go ahead.
How far?
Just to the next verse 33.
Food was set before him to eat, but he said, "I will not eat until I have told you about my errand." And he said, "Speak on."
Okay. So what happens, what does Laban do in verse 29?
He goes out to meet the servant.
Goes out to meet the servant. Why does he go out to meet the servant?
To welcome him.
To welcome them, okay. Yes. What's it say of why he went out there?
Saw what the gifts were.
Do you see that? What does it say?
So they wanted to see how much the girl was worth, how much they was willing to pay.
Verse 30. Mine says, as soon as he saw the ring. and the bracelets on his sister's arms, and he heard the words of Rebekah, his sister. What might we start to think that Laban is concerned about?
How much can I get?
Yeah.
Well, and he also, when she said, "Thus the man spoke to me," which, you know, maybe at that kind of time, did men not speak to women that were?
No, that thus he spoke to me is just saying that's what he said to me. That's all that's saying. We don't. We're not going to read anything more into that.
Countries, there's some of that decorum that women don't speak to men, or men don't. Yeah, I mean, there's
Yes, and there would have been, like in Jesus' day, especially in Samaria. Jesus goes out to the woman at the well in Samaria, and she says, "Why are you talking to me? Not only am I a woman, but a Samaritan woman." So yeah, certain cultures at certain times. I'm not sure if, because this is a different setting than the New Testament. I'm not sure. I couldn't tell you one way or the other. I hadn't really looked at that. Something to think about, though, whether this was an odd thing or not. I don't think it was necessarily that odd, but it could be. But anyways, when it says thus, he spoke to me, it's just saying this is what the guy said to me. But Laban, we're starting to get, and we don't want to, attack the guy too much here yet, but we want to start to consider, what is Laban concerned about? The first thing the Bible says he's concerned about is the stuff, the money, the wealth. That's his first concern. And secondly, Rebecca said some stuff. I'm going to go check this out, but this is starting to give us a little insight into who Laban is, and it's important for us to see this early on, because do we come across Laban later on? Yes, we're starting to get clues as to what kind of man this is, and then we will see later on if our hunch is correct. And
He's about money.
it seems like he is about
Who
money.
was the guy that Jesus told to come down out of the tree and sell all this stuff?
Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus was a wee little man. That's the only reason I know that. Right?
And, I was going to point out that it doesn't say that he ran as soon as he saw the gifts. He saw the gifts, heard what he said, and he goes, rich uncle. I got a rich uncle.
Yeah.
Because he mentions to her that
He does. Yeah.
Abraham's family, I have been sent to
Yes.
family. So
Yes.
he's like, oh, wait a minute, that's my uncle. So
Well, is it a
obviously he's got
pos-
money because look at these great gifts.
He's worried about the money,
Is it a
definitely.
possibility Laban was just figuring out if his sister had made wise decisions?
Could be, but we will
I'd like
find.
to think that was.
We will find out later. See, the part of the problem is I know the rest of the story, right? Trying not to give away too much, but I think most of us kind of know. But the point, the real point I want to kind of drive home is, pay attention to what the Bible is saying about Laban early on. It's giving us hints and clues as what kind of man this is. Part of the reason that Abraham didn't want his son, Isaac, to go back here, this is a wise thing. Laban is definitely a man who's all about the money. Give me the money. Are there people like that today? Sure, there are lots of people. So Laban's very modern in that way. Go ahead, Sean.
It's always been an issue.
What's that?
I guess ever since
Greed?
there's been-
Yeah. No, you're right. Greed has always been an issue. Money has always been an issue. Possessions have always been an issue. So this is the kind of man that he is. What does Laban say to the servant when he gets out to meet him?
What you doing out here?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, we've got everything ready for you. We've got everything ready for you. Why don't you come on back? So he's welcome. Come on back, join us. And when the servant arrives, what does the servant say? He goes back with him.
Said I'm not gonna eat until I tell you what I came for.
Yeah, I'm not going to eat until I tell you everything that I need to tell you. Why do you think he does that? Why do you think he says wait?
Their attitude might change towards him after he tells why he's here.
Could be.
Possible.
Could be.
After they find out why he's there.
Yeah, could
And
be.
if they're not agreeable, then he's just wasting his time.
Wasting his time. Now this I did look up, and this is very uncommon. You typically ate your meal and talked about things. You didn't wait.
Right.
So what the servant is doing at this point is odd, for the culture. You would enjoy the meal together, and then you would talk about why are you here, kind of thing, what's your business or whatever. But the servant says, no, I'm not gonna eat until I do this. And I think it's very plausible what we've already mentioned here. He wants to make sure I'm going to sit down and rest for the night. We're going to get, cozy and all that. But I want to make sure that you people are going to be okay with why I'm here.
And
Right?
still be welcome.
Yeah. They'd probably still be welcome, but he would be wasting his time.
Right.
Right? Let me get back out there. Let me repray the prayer because maybe I missed her. Maybe the girl's out there. Maybe all these women in this place would just water my camels. I don't know. So he wants to make sure that. Me neither. He wants to make sure that, right, this family is going to be agreeable. Regardless of whether Rebecca is agreeable, she might be agreeable, but if the family's not agreeable, it's not going to happen. You're going to have a problem.
Well, you don't give your daughter to just anybody that comes to your door.
Yeah, so this is a little bit of a strange request. Right. So all of these odd circumstances make it understandable why he says, I'm not going to say anything until, I'm not going to eat anything until I tell you why I'm here. All right. Any last thoughts, comments, questions? If there's nothing else, Paul, can I get you to close us?